Briefcase Crimes contains graphic depictions of violent acts, loud dog noises, and sometimes really bad jokes. It's not intended for all audiences, and listener discretion is advised. Welcome, listeners, to Briefcase Crimes. I'm Hannah, and I am filled with facts about horrific events.
I'm Liz, and I'm filled with morbid curiosity.
Elizabeth.
Yes, Hannah.
Elizabeth.
Yes, Hannah.
I cannot begin to explain how excited I am to tell you this tale.
I'm just excited because you're excited.
I'm so excited. This one is like, this is going to date when we recorded this, but we are in the spoopy season.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween is upon us.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought we needed a little something, supernatural side of things, as well as some moida.
I like that idea.
So
I'm here for supernatural, cryptid, give it all.
Elizabeth, what do you know about Spiderman?
Like the Spider-Man?
Yeah, like does whatever a spider can.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not like super familiar with the comic book stuff, but as far as the movies, I'd say like I've seen 80% of the movies that were put out since the 2000s.
Well, that's really great because this has absolutely nothing to do with Spider-Man, except that this man is called the Denver Spider-Man. Do you know anything about Theodore Edward Coneys, aka the Denver Spider-Man?
No, for some reason the name just looks familiar, but that could just be because there's a lot of like Theodore Ed murderers.
Well, what's funny about that though is isn't the nickname for Theodore Ted?
Mm-hmm.
And you can also call an Edward a Ted.
Oh, I've never heard that, but it makes sense.
Ted Kennedy was Edward Kennedy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So is he Ted? Oh, thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Our TED Talk.
TED Talk. Exactly. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
No, but I really don't know anything about him.
Great, because I'm about to tell you. We're going to start in Denver, 1941. If you look on your outline there, we have a very small Sophia from the Golden Girls.
I noticed. Picture it.
So we're going to start out with our victim. Our victim was Phillip Peters. He was a retired railroad auditor, and he just seems like a really, really cool kind of guy from everything that I've read. As per usual, I haven't read as much as I possibly could have.
Mm-hmm.
But I read a lot. And also, I feel like, especially for these kinds of episodes, I feel like I get drawn to these cases that are like the 1960s and older.
Yeah.
And the problems that I run into with these is that there's so many conflicting sources.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's not like you could whip out a cell phone and record it or anything.
Yeah. So half the time with these, it's like, he was a retired railroad auditor, but also he was this, and he also raised llamas, but maybe he didn't. Maybe they were alpacas. I don't know. But as far as I can see on all of these different sources, he was a pretty cool guy. He lived in Denver in West Moncrief Place in a little bungalow with his wife Helen, and he had lived there for 30 years, over 30 years at the time of his death. They were just like two super cute, super cool cats. They were members of the Denver Guitar Club and sometimes gave guitar and mandolin lessons.
Cute.
Can you imagine? Cute. So,
very.
Our story begins on October 17th. His wife Helen had experienced a fall, as 70-year-old women are wont to do.
Yeah.
She fell and broke her hip. So she was in the hospital for 5 weeks before this. Mm-hmm. So because it was 1941, and because Phil Peters was a man, all of his neighbors were like, oh no, your wife is in the hospital. You're going to starve to death.
Right.
And I mean, like, that was very nice of them.
Yeah.
It was 1941 or otherwise, but I just thought it was very funny because every article I read talked at length about all of these neighbors that would invite him over for hot meals.
Because of course, obviously, what's he gonna eat on his own?
Yeah, like just raw popcorn, I guess.
Yeah.
So they were making him meals, inviting him to dinner, and on October 17th, he was supposed to go over to his neighbor's house. I believe their last name is Ross, and he didn't arrive. He didn't show up, and that was not like him. And it was right across the street. It wasn't very far away. So they came across the street. They found the doors and windows were locked, but they managed to get one of the windows open. And I believe Mrs. Ross is the one who slipped through and found him dead in his home.
Yikes.
Big yikes. I can't even imagine.
No. Oh goodness, no.
So the following picture in the outline is the bungalow. It's the one on the left, and all of these will be available on all of our social media. But it's the one on the left in this picture. This is from a realtor listing from 1978. Also, if you're curious, this house was sold in recent years, so it is on Zillow. I'm a huge creep, so I did go through all 40 pictures that are on Zillow.
Oh, I'm going there right now.
It looks like there had to have been extensive remodeling done, but there's some aspects to this story that have to do with this house that aren't actually viewable in the pictures on Zillow.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the not putting the brutal murder that happened here in the listing, but
Why? Why ever would they do that?
why wouldn't you be like, this is the Denver Spiderman home? And then you'd have freaks like us that would be like, ooh,
Right.
So while you're looking through that, I'll continue into the investigation. So the neighbors obviously freak. They call the Denver PD, and the PD arrives on scene like right away.
Mm-hmm.
So they do like their investigation. They start into it, and they conclude he's been dead for about an hour at this point, and he had received 37 blows about his head and
Oh my gosh.
face with a cast iron stove shaker. Which, if you scroll down a little bit, I have an Etsy listing of one, and then I have a newspaper clipping of the actual weapon.
Interesting.
Just to give you an idea, because I didn't know what a stove shaker was.
No, I definitely didn't.
It appears to me like a crank that you would like crank.
Yeah.
To make the embers shake, as far as
Yeah.
I understand.
Like stir it up a little.
Yeah. So he was beaten to death with a cast iron stove shaker.
I just have to think like the dedication that it takes to sit there and give someone 37 blows.
Right? I mean, I can barely walk up the steps without getting winded. So I can't imagine just the sheer, you'd have to be in decent enough shape for that as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So they also found defensive wounds that implied that Peters attempted to defend himself with a cane, or, depending on the source, several canes.
Okay.
So I'm not sure the logistics on that one, but the other picture in that clipping is, I believe, the several canes.
Mm-hmm.
He was 73, so I believe he walked with a cane. I don't know where he would have just like, maybe he walked with two canes. I don't know. So they start doing, some basic forensics as well on this. They find some fingerprints, but it was 1941.
Right.
It wasn't like they could just whip it through the computer. Even now, it's not like they can just zip fingerprints through the computer and land on a match every single time.
Right, and they still have people who do look at them like with human eyes too, because the computer is fallible with that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. But even so, 1941, that's like, okay, you have fingerprints, but that's not going to do anything right away. And they find that the killer actually, obviously, he had an hour between the death and the discovery of the body, and they actually found that he took time to clean the murder weapon.
Wow.
They said, everything that I read said there was just blood everywhere, like all over the walls, everywhere. Which there'd be cast off and everything from the hitting with the stove shaker. So there was just blood everywhere, but the stove shaker was apparently very clean, like he had rinsed it or cleaned it off.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they see that he had spent a decent amount of time in the house, but he didn't steal anything. Like, they found a decent chunk of money. It's in different articles, which are listed at the bottom under sources. There's different accounts of how much money was in the house. I don't think it's super important for this exact story, but there was money around. He had ample time to take it, and
Didn't.
So they're rolling out. They're trying to figure out a motive, and they say, okay, it's obviously not robbery, right? And they talk to friends and neighbors and relatives, and nobody can think of anybody that would want Phil Peters dead. So they look all through the house. It's like the first thing they do is look through the house, and they search it stem to stern, looking for anybody that could still be there, and they find nothing. They do find the trap door to the attic is stuck, so you can't actually get into the attic crawl space.
Okay.
And at first they were like, maybe somebody could be there, but it's stuck. And also the trap door leading up to it, I thought this was interesting. It's only 8 inches by 15 inches.
Oh.
So like a piece of computer paper, almost. That's 8.5 by 11.
Yeah, like a legal size sheet, though.
Yeah, that's small.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, what's the word I'm looking for even? It's
like a dog door. It's like not even human size.
It's like short-sightedly small. Like,
yeah.
But like, you see the size of the house. There's not really an attic anyway. It's
No.
just like a crawl space sort of thing.
That's like, we have a crawl space to get into our attic, and it's like, I don't think I could fit up it, honestly. Like, you have to have a ladder. There's no, you don't pull it down or anything. Like, no one's getting into that easily, period.
Yeah. So I just thought it was interesting. They push on the trapdoor, and it's stuck, and it's also really small.
Mm-hmm.
So for a minute they were like, hey, maybe, but then no. So they can't find the murderer, and the case kind of goes cold a little bit. So here's where we're going to move into the spoopiness.
All right.
So after she had time to heal her broken hip and presumably a little bit her broken heart, I mean, she just lost a husband.
Right.
Helen Peters came back to live in the home that she had shared with her husband for over 30 years, which I think is rough.
I would not be able to do it, period.
Well, I think that even with like when my grandfather died in the house that my grandmother lived in, and she like didn't want to leave it. Like she, even when she just recently moved out of that house, didn't want to leave that house. And you would think you'd be like, I don't know, there's a traumatic event here.
Yeah, I think, well, that's the thing. If it was like something horrifying like this, like a murder with that many blows and all the blood, there's no way I would want to. But if it had been like natural causes, I can see that you would obviously stay.
Yeah, and especially when they don't know what the motive is.
Right.
They didn't catch the killer.
Yeah, like she doesn't know if she's also, a target.
Okay, so she moves back in, and also sometimes it says one person, sometimes it says she had 2 of these, and sometimes they're just people, and sometimes they're close friends. But regardless, she had at least one person that acted as a caregiver to her because she was very old, she was hard of hearing, and a housekeeper, right?
Okay.
So they cared for her, but they also took care of the house. I've read that it was 2, their actual names and like who they were, but as far as I know, there was at least one person. Both the housekeeper or housekeepers and Mrs. Peters start having weird stuff happen in this house. Things start going missing, stuff starts getting moved, like they can't tell what's going on, They start hearing weird noises, like all the time. And then, according to one source, in an interview from 1960, so many, many years after the murders, from the Denver Post, apparently in July of 1942, which was 9 months after the murder, one of the housekeepers called police and reported an escalation to the strange occurrence. So these hauntings were getting so bad that they were calling the police, like on a ghost.
Right.
But when you hear this, you can really understand why she would go to the police, because like for what she claims that she saw. So she claims in her own words here, she says, "Just a few minutes ago, I heard a sort of tapping. I had heard it before, but I thought it was only some woodpeckers. But this time I walked into the kitchen and I saw the door to the stairway that leads upstairs slowly open. A foot came out, and then I saw a thin white hand on the door. I screamed, and the man ducked back into the stairway, and I heard him running up the steps." So she's so shaken up by this man in their home, right? She calls the police. The police come, and there's nothing there. And even more so, the door that she claims she saw open was still sealed shut. still couldn't open that tiny weird door, right?
Yeah.
Creepy. So whether this is true or not, because it was so long afterward, and with everything that we find out later, like, I don't know. But whether it's true or not, the housekeepers freak out. The housekeepers refuse to stay in this house anymore. They're not going to stay in a haunted house. And obviously, Mrs. Peters can't live in a house alone, haunted or otherwise.
Right.
She can't
She
live in a
needs
house,
care.
yeah, by herself. So she ends up moving to Grand Junction to live with her son and leaves the house empty.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. Getting spooky. With the occupants gone, everybody's out of the house is left empty. So nobody should be there to experience this haunting, right?
Right.
You don't hear about, like, well, people moved out of that house and it's super haunted and you can tell because what?
Right.
But it's empty, and still neighbors and locals still claim that weird stuff is going on. This house is like still, it's so haunted that it's affecting the neighbors, right? They've got strange noises. The house starts having these foul, like fetid odors coming from it. It's disgusting, and no one knows what the deal is. So you've got two different camps. You've got people that believe the house is haunted, and they're saying, you know, this is definitely a ghost. It's creepy. I'm staying away from it. And then there are people that are saying, well, obviously these things that are happening, the paper disappearing and the blinds going up and down and weird stuff like that, that's obviously just local vandals.
Right.
We just literally on our street here had somebody move out, and within, like, I don't even know, half a day, full day, the neighborhood kids were in the house.
What?
Yeah, they were, because you know how, for those of you who don't know, on my street, all of the neighborhood kids love to come and see my dog, so I get all the hot goss from the 10-year-olds. And they were telling me that so-and-so moved out, and two of the boys had gone in the house and were, like, finding stuff that they left behind for a hideout and stuff. I don't know, man. But where there is an empty house, the neighborhood vandals, they will flock.
Yep, it's true.
So, because of the idea of vandalism or whatever's going on, people are starting to report this to the police, so much so that they start doing regular checks on this house. Like, the police keep coming and wandering around the house and checking for any weirdness that's going on, right?
Right.
So on July 30th, 1942, which is 10 months after the murder of Phil Peters, Roy Bloxam and Bill Jackson, who were two Denver police officers, they were making a routine visit when they heard a lock click on the second floor.
Okay.
So they rushed up the steps to investigate, and they heard sound behind that door, the closet door that leads to the attic.
It's getting heated up.
So they ripped open the closet door just in time to see a pair of long, thin man's legs about to disappear through that tiny hole trap door to the attic. So Roy Bloxam grabbed the legs and he pulled. And here's where we get into the section that I have titled The Spiderman.
Okay.
They pull a man out of the ceiling, basically. And the police chief at the time, James Childers, described him as, quote, the strangest looking human I had ever seen. He was a tall man, just under 6 feet, but thin as a wilted weed. His dirty hair hung low over his ears, and his skin was the ugly, unwashed gray of an overcast sky.
Man, that guy should be a writer.
I was gonna say, I think he took a creative writing class.
Yeah, it's very flowery.
Like, now's my chance.
It's like when you have to meet a word quota on an essay.
Also, it's noted that his clothes were rotting off of him, and they were held together with string and ropes. They take this random guy to the police station, and he claimed his name was Matthew Cornish, and that he was from Tonawanda City, New York, which, if that is a real place, let's go to it, because that sounds like a good time.
Probably upstate.
I mean, PA has a Towanda.
Do we?
Yeah.
Huh.
Why can't we go to... We could go to Tonawanda City and we could eat hamburger, apple pie, and coffee, which is what the police fed him that made him confess his true identity. Like, okay, you got me with the old hamburger trick, the way to a felon's heart.
I always say.
His stomach.
Man.
So he admits, I'm not Matthew Cornish. I am Theodore Edward Coneys, a.k.a.
Ted Con.
Ted Con. He was born in 1882, and he was a very sickly child. He had health issues all throughout his life, not just for his adolescence, but into his adulthood as well. But he was such a sickly child that the doctors warned that he almost certainly would not make it to 18.
Well.
So if you're not going to make it to 18, why waste all that time in school? So he just pieced right out.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that's the 1880s. Like,
yeah,
it's not like today. There's no child left behind. All children left behind.
Right.
If you're not working in a mill, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So he dropped out of school and he held a series of menial jobs. He goes from job to job. There's a few little things, but there's nothing that's like, yes, he was this. He has a very interesting relationship with his mother, like a lot of these killers that we talk about.
I was just gonna say, don't they all, honestly?
In his case, his father died when he was very young, and so his mother was like the main breadwinner. She was the person that he lived with, the person that he provided for, and she provided for him. And obviously, with him being so sick as well, you know, his mother had to deal with that kind of.
Right.
There's a story about his mother basically gave like all of their money to these guys in sort of a get-rich scheme. And I didn't write it down, but I can't remember what they were even doing. But regardless, they didn't come back. They didn't send them anything else. They basically just took their money and left. Again, in the 1880s.
Yeah, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, like, I could go the next town over and you'll never find me. You know, there's no... It was just easier to steal from people then.
Yeah.
We should go back to simpler times. Make America great again when it was easier to steal. Anyway...
Dangerous road you're walking there.
He has this relationship with his mother where they're very financially codependent, obviously, because they're all that they have. And after his mother eventually died, he can't hold down a job. It's during the Great Depression, which could be part of it. And he becomes a transient. He becomes homeless. He's sleeping on the streets. He's having all of these experiences with that. And he has this sort of chip on his shoulder as well, where he was always thin and he was always frail and he was always sick. And, you know, he wasn't supposed to live past 18. And here he is, I believe when one murder happened, he was 56. So, I mean...
Yeah, he surpassed that expectancy by a lot.
Yeah, so you can imagine, like, not that I'm trying to, like, drum up empathy for this guy, but I will say I read a lot of true crime. And I will say that this is one of the more empathetic... Hold on. Hazel, if you can't be quiet, she's so itchy. You're gonna make it sound like I'm rattling the change in my pockets like I'm an old man. Or I'm possibly some sort of Dickensian ghost. Okay, so I read a lot of true crime. I imbibe this quite a lot, and I will say, not that I have empathy for people who murder people in cold blood, especially when we get into the actual murder, you'll see that it's not, you know, black and white here, but I do feel a little empathetic for him just because he was chronically ill and he was an other kind of person where I think he felt a little persecuted. He resented how others looked at him and treated him because he was frail and because he was sick. And what do you do when you're only supposed to live to be 18 so you don't ever make anything of yourself?
Right.
like I joked before, if you're not going to live past 18, why bother with school? But like if that's your mental state and you live to be in your 50s, no wonder you end up a transient.
Right.
What skills do you have, you know? However, in his younger years, he was a member of the Denver Guitar Club.
Oh.
So he either played guitar or mandolin. I didn't really look into that deeply, but he was in the guitar club, and that's where he became acquainted with Phillip and Helen Peters.
Man.
It was even to the point where he would occasionally come to their home for dinner.
Oh.
This was pre and post death of Mama Coneys here. It's actually this acquaintance here that's going to move us into the night of October 17th. In the fall of 1941, Coneys went to the Peters house, and he was hoping that he could catch the couple and that they would give him some food and or money. He's currently living on the streets. He doesn't have a lot of either.
Right.
But unfortunately for Phillip, and I guess fortunately for Ted, this happened to be shortly after Helen took her fall, and Phillip was visiting her in the hospital at the time of his arrival. Instead of doing what a normal human person would do, which is waiting for your random guitar mandolin man acquaintance to return from his outing, he just tried to see if any of the doors were open.
Right.
And lo and behold, one was. The back door was open.
Mm-hmm.
So he went inside and he nebbed around, he creeped around, he looked around, he found some food, so he ate some of that. He probably, laid in someone's bed and sat in someone's chair.
Okay, Goldilocks.
Porridge. Hazel, why you gotta ruin our comedic timing? Anyway, he goes inside, he snoops around, he gets some food. He takes the lay of the land, as one does with a random acquaintance from the guitar and mandolin club, finds the trapdoor that leads to the attic crawl space. And again, a normal human person would not see an 8 by 15 inch hole door and be like, yeah, I want to slither my snaky body in that. And actually, to that end, the attic itself was only 37 inches in height at its highest point.
And he's nearly 6 feet tall.
Yes, it was 7 feet long and 4 feet wide.
Oh my goodness.
And if you scroll down, there are pictures of it.
Oh.
I can include pictures.
I gotta scroll. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's tiny, and there's one of those pictures,
playpen.
right? Did you say playpen?
Play tent.
Oh, tent. One of those pictures, you can see a detective sticking his head into the hole.
Uh-huh.
I can't even imagine how you'd get your shoulders through there.
I mean, he would be so thin. Like, I was thinking about it, like, what's the width of my shoulders? And, like, I'm a little heavy, so, like, I think my shoulders are 19 inches. Yeah, you'd have to measure.
I think I just imagine I have like linebacker shoulders or something, but you know how they say that like if a cat can put its head in something, it can put its whole body in?
Yeah.
Because they're either their collarbones, I think it's their collarbones, are like floating. They're not attached. So they can like fold in half. Like that.
Yeah.
Samsung.
Yeah, I mean he totally could have like brought his shoulders in or whatever.
Yeah, just weird.
Or like one arm at a time, I don't know.
So he slithered up into that hole, and that's the only verb I can use because it's the only visual image I get is him like, on The Grinch.
Yes.
He's like slithering on the ground.
Oh my God.
That's what I imagine. So he stays in this attic. He's just like, tight, I found me a hidey hole, and he slinks into it, and he stays there and sneaks down when Peters leaves to visit Helen in the hospital. So he's got it made in the shade. And this is right out of his own mouth. He says, every night I would listen at the hole until I heard him snoring, and then I would crawl out and go through the icebox. And I would take just enough so it wouldn't be too noticeable. I would carry it back to my nest and eat it there.
Gross.
I found parts of an old crystal set in one of the closets. And a pair of earphones. So by crystal set, he means like a radio.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I fixed it up so it would work, and I listened to all the newscasts, music, and everything. I used to beat it down to the bathroom and even shaved with the old man's razor.
Mm-hmm.
So he took to sneaking down because he gets bored.
Well, obviously.
He's up in, like, basically, can we just talk about this? 7 feet long, 4 feet wide, 37 inches high. That's a casket, my dude.
Ooh.
You're in a house coffin.
Ooh. I mean, it's slightly taller, but that's only at the peak of the roof.
Yeah, and you can see the pictures. It is I'm not an architect, so I don't know, but it's that normal roof shape.
Yeah.
Where it's like not, you know, when you're a kid and you have that one, everybody has that one friend who has the attic room.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, I don't want to be on the short side of the room because
it's the vaulted ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 6 feet tall and 12,
Right.
so I don't want to be on that side of the room.
Right.
So it is like that, where the tallest part of the room is.
I think didn't one of the Zillow pictures I think showed that the bedrooms do have vaulted ceilings, so it's like he may very well have been like sleeping above them.
That.
Like literally above the bed.
I looked on Trulia as well. Trulia only has 24 pictures, and it's not on here either, but I desperately wanted somebody to have a picture of the crawl space or the hole to get in the crawl space. But I don't imagine it's the same anymore. I can't imagine a modern day owner being like, yeah, you know what I would love to do to get my Christmas decorations in and out of the attic?
Yeah,
Shove it through
a tiny hole.
Yeah. Shove it through basically a public school lunch tray.
Yeah.
So he gets bored up in his little house coffin, his nest, and he says that he took to sneaking down when Peters was home and following him around the house. He said it was sort of a game. It gave me a thrill. He would follow him around and then he'd like hide behind doors and stuff.
Yeah.
Like try not to get caught. Which does, okay, I know that earlier I was like, he's a little empathetic, but like what happens with the murder is less empathetic when you know that he was like trying to get caught.
Yeah.
Like the not getting caught was part of the thrill.
Right.
So on October 17th, the day of the murder, Coneys came down from the attic around 4 p.m. to help himself to the icebox, as he says. He said he thought Peters was out. He thought he had gone to the hospital or what have you.
Right.
But he was only napping, bless his heart. So he's in the kitchen, and Peters hears a noise from the kitchen, investigates, and stumbles upon him raiding his fridge like some sort of raccoon.
Right.
And I mean, like, at this point, you would hope that he would just, like, shoo him away with a broom. I don't know. Like, I want this to go well, but I know it doesn't, because we already talked about what happens here. But he comes down, stumbles on him, and obviously the only story that we have here is Theodore Coneys' statement.
Right.
And the forensic evidence, but again, it was 1940s. And not to say that there wasn't forensics in the 1940s. However,
right. Not the same caliber.
Yeah. There's not going to be a Forensic Files episode on Ted. According to Ted Coneys, he is surprised, as is Phillip Peters. And so Coneys panicked. He grabbed a .44 revolver from the wall.
Okay.
As one does. You know, I mean, it's Colorado. I grew up with guns on our walls.
Yeah.
So he grabs the gun from the wall and he hits him with it, uses it as a blunt weapon. And later, the broken gun was found. The butt had a broken butt. Because that sentence made me laugh when I read it, that he had a broken butt.
Yeah.
He hits him with this revolver and uses it as a blunt weapon before finding the stove shaker. And he did say that he hit him first. So, sorry for the pronoun game, but Peters hit Coneys first, according to Coneys.
Yeah.
With a cane. Now,
I mean, can you really blame him much, though?
It's his house, dude.
Yeah.
Like
if you invite someone into your home, that's one thing. but that doesn't mean you're just going to be there all the time.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I don't think that if you came out at 4 p.m. from a nap and you saw me going through your fridge, that you would be like, oh my God, and start beating me with a cane.
That's a different relationship.
Was going to say, I don't think these two had the kind of relationship
No.
that I do.
No.
These two were more like, if some random person from 7th grade band was just in your house eating your food.
Right. Thank God I wasn't in band.
Rude.
No.
So it's also been said though that Peters may not have recognized Coney. Not that he wouldn't have been like, "Hey dude, where'd you come from?
Right.
And why are you eating my food?" But he, it had been some time. Coneys had been living on the street. I don't know how long it had been since they last saw each other, but again, not like they're keeping up on Facebook.
Right.
He beats him to death, as we said, with the stove shaker, and then cleaned up the murder weapon. And then he went back to his nest in the attic.
Yeah, his nest.
Why? Why? You've just killed a man. And in one of the articles I read, he said when he was describing the first time he found the nest in the attic, that it looked like a good place to hole up for the winter. So I guess he's just like, I got it made in the shade. I can be up here in this attic. I don't care that there's a dead body downstairs. Like, something is unhinged in this man's brain.
Yeah.
Like, he goes up into the attic, and he lived there for 10 months with very little comfort. His bed was an ironing board. He had tapped into the wiring of the house, and he strung a light bulb there, and there also he had an outlet. And he had that makeshift radio, which he used to listen to the news coverage of the murder.
Of course.
You can see in the pictures of the attic, I think the one with the detective's head, you can see the light bulb.
Yeah.
And you see all those buckets?
Yes.
They are full of...
Don't say it.
They are full of, quote, human offal? OFFAL?
Oh.
So, like, I'm taking that to mean...
Waste.
And I also want you to remember... This is what I don't understand. He sneaked down, right? He used to beat it down to the bathroom and shave, but he didn't take a bath. For 10 months. 10.
I don't even want to think about it.
Right? And remember, he's in there from October to July.
Yeah.
So he's in the hot, hot, hot heat. And he said it was really cold. In the winter, it was really cold. And in the summer, it was really hot.
In Denver.
Which, like, what? You're the one who chose to live in somebody's, like, probably uninsulated attic.
Yeah.
I think Zillow said it was built in, like, 1885.
I love that you found the Zillow listing.
I know. I was so pleased. At first, I was just going to go to Google Maps. And then I was like, I bet you this has been on Zillow.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let's see. Built in 1895.
Okay. So it's 1895.
And it still has no air conditioning, supposedly.
Oh, my God. So if you would like to also stay in the attic in the...
Right.
Hot, hot heat. You can get the real Ted experience. The house is no longer for sale, unfortunately, but maybe they'll list it as an Airbnb or something.
Maybe. Yeah, it was sold in 2017, so.
If they were smart. Okay, so he's up there and he's nasty. Like, he stinks. Yeah. There's awful, which is exactly how it sounds.
Yeah.
And how many buckets? Like,
oh, God.
That picture has so many
buckets.
Yeah.
Well, and I had assumed, like, storage, like they used it for some storage, but oh my God.
Them buckets, they're all his.
Where did he get so many buckets?
I don't know, because he also said that he only went outside once, and that was...
That makes no sense.
But see, this is the other thing I don't understand. He said he only went outside once after Mrs. Peters left. He allegedly went outside to scoop up a small shovel full of snow after she had left because she had turned off the utilities when she moved. But she moved in July.
Mm-hmm.
I was under the impression that she moved in July and that he got arrested at the end of July. So I'm not sure how that story plays out, Ted, but maybe I'm not understanding when she moved, I guess.
I don't know.
I don't know. Talking about the awful buckets, I want to just keep talking about these awful buckets. So, according to one of the articles I read, one of the original articles, it said that when they examined the attic space, it is said to have smelled so bad that it made one of the officers vomit.
Oh.
Which, like, girl, same.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes my coworkers will put on a hand lotion that makes me want to vomit.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to smell. I don't think I could live with myself if I couldn't shower for 10 months.
But, like, well, I guess some of the neighbors have reported odors.
Yes.
But the wife never did. Suppose, or at least they didn't mention it.
She was
or you
hard
didn't.
of hearing. Maybe she was hard of smell.
Maybe. I mean, I
don't
guess
know.
it's not impossible.
Maybe she got out before the real stink started to seep.
Yeah, maybe. Although,
The seepy stink.
well, and if it was cold in the attic, that would help
That's
stave it off.
true. Maybe she did move in the winter, and so she didn't smell the stinky stink smell.
Right.
But, like, can you imagine your house stinking so bad that your neighbors can smell it?
No, I actually cannot.
I get,
Believe it or not, no.
Well, you don't keep your awful buckets around?
No.
Where do you keep your awful bucket? I get paranoid. I don't want to be the dog house. I don't want people to come in my house and be like, oof, it smells like dog in here. So I can't imagine, like, oof, it smells like human awful.
Right.
Yuck. Okay. If you remember, right after the murder, they checked that attic. I made a big hullabaloo about it and how it was sealed. Every time they checked it, it was sealed.
Right.
That's because he would push his body weight against it. So he was literally, like, pushing against them pushing.
Right. I mean, which makes sense.
But that's so creepy to me for some reason. Like, I don't know why that creeps me out. I mean, the whole story creeps me out. Don't get me wrong. The idea of having somebody live in your walls and live in your attic is just beyond my comprehension. It creeps me out, I think, that they were pushing against it and thinking, oh, that's sealed, nobody in there.
Right.
But there was so much somebody in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, gives me the willies. We go past the awful buckets and the detective's feet sticking out of the hole.
Also, I would like to say, because I'm a busybody, the house is not an Airbnb. However, there is an Airbnb on the other side of the street, just a block away.
Do you think if we stayed at that Airbnb, we could go to this house and just be like, can I just see your attic?
Probably not.
Hi, you don't know me, but I'm from Pennsylvania and I have a podcast. Please can I just come and live in your attic for 10 months and keep my human awful in a bucket?
Oh, no. Hard pass.
So, taking you through the photographs, we got the awful buckets, buckets on buckets. We've got the hole with the feet sticking out, the detective scooting his way up there, and then we have the actual Ted himself, skinny man. Now, there is another picture of him that's a full length that I wanted to put on here, but it was too long. No matter what I did, I couldn't get it to fit on the page. So
I'm just gonna Google it.
You can Google him and you can see him, but he is lanky. Oh, that's the other thing. So you remember he was 6 feet tall. At the time of his arrest, he weighed 75 pounds. Which, like, if you're only living off of old man table scraps,
right,
and like sneaking food out of the icebox, like an icebox sneaker thief, like, I guess you would be thin. And if you were already thin and frail, and I think we all know that person who is like scary thin, and everybody's always like, eat a cheeseburger, and they do. They eat like a crazy person, and they just can't keep weight on.
Right.
Like, he might have been one of those.
Could have been.
I don't know. Maybe that's why he wanted that hamburger and apple pie and coffee so much.
I cannot find a full-length photo of him.
If you look up Denver Spider-Man, there is one.
I was just looking for his name.
If you look up Denver Spider-Man, you can see a full length of his. I believe it's like his attic nest garb, because you can see the ropes and strings holding it together.
Yes. Yikes.
That is a look. He's turning looks.
Provided to you by the Denver Public Library.
Woohoo! Thank you, Denver Public Library.
Wow.
We're at your local library, folks.
Wow.
Yeah, like, he's thin.
Yes.
I personally do not think he looks scary thin.
No, I think that was rude on behalf of the officer, to be completely honest. And he's not like a mutant, my god. Like, he's a normal looking guy. Other than being frail.
We can't see his skin, so we don't know if he has gray skin the color of an overcast day.
Yeah, but then again, if he hadn't showered for 10 months, he would just be dirty. Sorry to bring that back around.
Can I tell you a very small tangent story about a dirt experience?
I guess so.
One time, I'm going to have to change names, or just not refer to any names here, but I knew a boy once in high school. It was my friend's brother, and one summer he got very tan. And his brothers were commenting about how tan he was. He was so tan. They can't believe how tan he was, especially because he hadn't really been going outside. So how was he getting so tan? And then right before school started, he took a shower and he wasn't tan anymore. And it's because he wasn't showering all summer, and it was a dirt tan.
Oh, yikes. Hello, Pigpen.
Yes! And I can never forget. I will be on my deathbed, and my grandchildren will be like, Nana, tell us what are your last words? And I'll be like, do you remember the dirt tan story? Like, I will go to my grave with that, because it is just insane. So, he's been arrested in part of our story here, and we're on to the last little bit, which is the trial. So onto the trial, and you know that unless the trial is like super duper noteworthy, I don't super focus on it because I don't find it that interesting. Forgive me. So basically, he pled not guilty.
How?
To first degree.
Oh my god.
Okay, so here is why he did that. He pled not guilty because in basically the defense's case, they tried to say that it was not premeditated.
Okay.
And that it kind of was like a self-defense thing. Like, it wasn't like he snuck down and killed him in cold blood. It was more like he came at him, and it was, I think there's a quote from him in one of these articles that says about it was either me or him.
Which is kind of true, maybe.
But also, like, hey, bud.
Don't live in somebody's attic.
Yeah. Some people's kids.
Also, if I were the wife, I would have charged far more than just the murder of my husband.
I'm not sure, because this would have been the criminal case. So this would have been the state of Colorado versus Theodore Coneys. If she wanted to charge something, it would have had to be a civil case.
Because I would have just, like trespassing or whatever.
Yeah. Well, she could have done that if she was going to do, like, a wrongful death or anything like that. So, like, you see that with the OJ case.
No.
So, not to get me started on the OJ case,
I
but
won't.
You had a criminal case and a civil case in that instance. The criminal case was lost and the civil case was won, which has always bothered me a lot. Anyway.
Maybe another day.
Bringing this back to the spooky season, Halloween 1942, which was over a year from the murder itself, Theodore Edward Coneys was sentenced to life in prison, even though the prosecution had gone for the death penalty by means of the gas chamber. So he managed to escape the death penalty, but he did secure himself life in prison.
Yeah.
And he was quoted, and I think this is a very sad quote, but he was quoted as saying, "Now I feel safe. I'll have a better home than I have had in years. And that's just awful. Like,
It's sad, yeah.
you can see that through this entire story. And that's kind of why I said, like, I don't think that people who kill people are empathetic in
No.
most of the time. And I think that there are sad circumstances in his life.
Right.
I think that a lot of things culminated in a way where he felt like he had no choice but to either be homeless or live in an attic, I guess.
Yeah.
In a house coffin.
Yeah.
You know, there are certain articles where he talks about wanting a space where he could be by himself, free from judgment, and that goes back to him feeling like he is an other because of this, like, being.
Mm-hmm.
I also had a really hard time figuring out what was wrong with him. Like,
Yeah.
about him being sickly, but they never say, like.
I mean, that could even just mean that he had constant colds. Like, he could have just had allergies and been suffering symptoms, you know?
They said of
Like,
him being so frail, so it could have been like a GI issue. It could have been like
yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know
Yeah.
if it's like that Victorian idea of like failure to thrive.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Like he may not necessarily have been chronic in the sense that we describe chronic illness now, but just like I was gonna say infirm, but you know, just not normal. Like how dare you not be normal, basically.
Yeah, and I mean he could have had an immunodeficiency.
Mm-hmm.
There could have been a lot of different stuff, but
yeah.
And again, because of it being so old, and because I feel like specifically with this project, this program that we have here, I feel like we're drawn more toward these slightly older cases a little bit because I feel more comfortable with the distance.
Yes.
I don't think I would feel super comfortable discussing things that happened like very, very recently
with live victims and what have
with
you.
people whose families are still around and those kinds of things. But
right.
And that's not even like I can't goof on it.
No.
But you know, I like these sort of vintagey crimes.
And plus, there's a lot more mystery. There's more question behind it.
Oh, yes. And there's all of that, like, we got 15,000 sources that say 900 different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, in none of those sources could I find what his problem was. If you know what his problem was, tweet us at Briefcase Crimes. So, yeah, he died in the prison hospital in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents were alive.
Oh, mine too.
So remember, he wasn't supposed to live past 18. He died at the ripe old age of 84.
That's why, so I looked at that bullet point ahead of time, I have to admit. And that's why I was thinking it was more of that kind of illness, like, oh, well, he's just not normal, so he's sick, you know?
Or he's skinny.
Yeah.
He must be sick. Maybe he's rickety. Maybe he had rickets.
Maybe.
I don't know. Does he look like he has bow legs? Anyway, apologies to anyone who has rickets. I don't mean to offend. But yeah, 84. I'm probably not going to live to 84. Like.
Yeah, no, probably not. Not me anyway.
Insane. So yeah, he died at 84 and was buried in an unmarked grave. Which, like, I don't know why I felt the need to include that. I just think it's fitting.
Yeah, well, I mean, he didn't really have family, you know?
I think this is a very complicated, twisty-turny story.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has nothing to do with Peter Parker.
No.
But
despite the image you included at the beginning of the note.
Well, yeah, but it makes me laugh. The Denver Spider-Man does whatever a spider can, fills buckets full of human offal.
Yeah.
You know how
I don't know.
Goes.
It's just one of those things where you're able to feel bad for both the victims and kind of the other victim, just the victim of life, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't justify, but you're allowed to feel bad for their circumstances.
Yes. Agreed.
That's called empathy, kiddos.
The more you know. Okay. That was a lot.
That was.
You know, I had an idea the other day.
What was that?
Elizabeth, you're a librarian.
I am.
You reading any good books?
Don't get me started. You already know I'm reading a good book. Why are you doing this?
You got any recommendations?
So I'm a librarian, and therefore I believe anybody can read anything. And even though I'm a full-grown adult, I still very much enjoy young adult / teen fiction. And one of my other friends recently recommended a really nice fantasy series. It's definitely on the mature end of teen fiction, but if you're into kind of fantasy, not mythological, but like fairy lands, kind of magical stuff, and with a little bit of romance thrown in there. A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's a 3-book series with a novella and a technically 5th book on the way if you're counting the novella. It's like a 3.5 by Sarah J. Maas, Maas. AAS, I know.
Very dandy of her.
Yeah, but I'm on the 3rd book and I'm breezing through them. They're amazing. I had set myself this goal, of course, in January. I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but I made like year goals that I wanted to achieve. Well, it's October.
Is very different.
I feel like a resolution is like a more broad thing.
I think a resolution to me is more like, I don't know. I always equate those with like negative things.
Yeah, same.
I'm gonna lose weight, or I'm gonna quit smoking, or I'm gonna.
No, but my stuff was like read more books, like take care of yourself, like, you know. So one of my things was to read 12 books, so 1 book a month, and I have fallen behind. But this series is so good that I'm catching up fast.
How many have you done?
Well, I'm on. Let me think. I managed to do 1 a month until July, so that'd be 7, and then I'm on the 3rd one now, so 8, 9. That makes 10.
And we're
Once
on
I
October.
finish this one, I know. So I'm catching right back up. That's just
Excellent.
how good the series is.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I'm proud.
If anyone cares, I'm currently reading all the Hercule Poirot books because I'm 100.
That's okay.
Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, just will never get old. If you like true crime, it's not true, but it is crime, and he is a handsome little Belgian boy. I am also reading Cold Mountain, which is a Civil War historical fiction.
See, you're all about that Civil War, American War stuff, and I'm like European wars late on me.
Well, to each his own.
Yeah.
When you cut me, I bleed red, white, and blue, baby.
Oh, God. My people's have not been here long enough for that.
No. You cut you bleed pasta sauce.
That's right. My one coworker and I just got into it because we were not like fighting, but you know, she had this book on a Holocaust survivor autobiography, and I'm like, ooh, that's my crap right there. So
I know so many people though that will not read like Holocaust memoirs or Holocaust historical fiction, and that's just like not there. It just brings them right down. But like,
yeah, I mean it does bring me down, like don't get me wrong,
but in a somber way.
Yeah, it's a remembrance. It's very much like this can never happen again, and honestly some of the similarities to 2019 are somewhat stifling, and I really think people should read a little bit more of it, if I do say so myself.
Or read Hercule Poirot.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be bummed, if Holocaust stuff is triggering to you, or something that you just can't deal with it, I would suggest a wee Belgian with incredible skills for deduction.
Mm-hmm.
There are 43 of them.
Woo, I'll keep you busy.
Yeah, you could do that for several years if you did 1 a month.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this up. Thank you for listening. As always, you can find us. Where can you find us, Elizabeth?
You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Coffee, Instagram. I think those are the big ones.
And we are Briefcase Crimes on every platform.
Yep.
We got that on lock.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Shoulder blanket.